After decades of debate, Congress enacted major changes via the FY 2022 National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, which incorporated key elements of the I Am Vanessa Guillén Act, signed into law in December 2021. These provisions remove the investigation and prosecution of sexual assaults and related crimes from the standard military chain of command. I Am Vanessa Guillén Act revamps military investigations, or the Texas Tribune. In practical terms, this means unit commanders no longer decide whether to prosecute a sexual assault case. Instead, independent military prosecutors outside the victim's unit will make prosecution decisions. The law also made sexual harassment a specific punishable offense under the Uniform Code of Military Justice (UCMJ). For the first time, Biden order elevates sexual harassment as separate military crime after Guillén murder or military.com. President Biden issued an executive order in January 2022 to codify sexual harassment as a standalone crime in the UCMJ, closing a long-standing gap where harassment was not clearly criminalized. Biden order elevates sexual harassment as separate military crime after Guillén murder, or military.com. Under the new system, if a service member reports sexual harassment, it can be investigated and taken to a special trial counsel for possible legal action, rather than being handled informally by their command. Moreover, the reforms include stronger protections against retaliation, a critical area since it's documented that between 50 to 60% of service members who report MST experience some form of professional or social retaliation. Military sexual trauma, the military's silent battlefield, or Columbia Social Work Review. The law mandates that those who retaliate could themselves face punishment, and victims are to be provided support and advice on how to report any reprisals. I Am Vanessa Guillén Act revamps military investigations, or the Texas Tribune. Other changes implemented or underway: the establishment of the Office of Special Trial Counsel in each service branch to handle sexual offense prosecutions, and the addition of other serious crimes like domestic violence to the list of offenses removed from command authority to prevent conflicts of interest similar to MST cases. I Am Vanessa Guillén Act revamps military investigations, or the Texas Tribune. I Am Vanessa Guillén Act revamps military investigations, or the Texas Tribune. These reforms represent one of the biggest shifts in the military justice system in modern history, essentially overturning the centuries-old practice of commanders having total discretion over crimes in their unit. The impetus was clear too often. Conflicts of interest or biases in the chain of command led to cases being swept aside and perpetrators not being held accountable, eroding trust in the system. Improvements in MST reporting and support procedures. Alongside legal changes, the DoD has been revising its internal policies to encourage reporting and improve support. Each branch's Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Program, SAPR, or SHARP in the Army, has updated training curricula to emphasize consent, bystander intervention, and victim advocacy. The military has increased the number of Sexual Assault Response Coordinators, SARCs, and victim advocates available at installations. New policies like Safe to Report have been adopted by some services, which grant immunity for minor collateral misconduct, for example, underage drinking, when a victim comes forward, aiming to eliminate a barrier to reporting. The Department of Defense also launched an Independent Review Commission (IRC) on sexual assault in 2021. This commission of outside experts delivered a report with 82 recommendations, many of which have been implemented or are in progress. These include establishing a dedicated prevention workforce, improving investigative training, and addressing the toxic command climates that enable harassment. For instance, the military is working on hiring specialized violence prevention professionals at bases to proactively identify and mitigate risks, rather than relying solely on annual training briefs. There's also a push to reform how initial inquiries are done, using trained investigators from independent offices, for example. Army CID now has a specialized unit for sexual crimes. The military service academies have similarly been under the microscope, as their sexual assault rates remain troubling. New programs at academies focus on peer leadership and culture change among cadets and midshipmen. Senior leaders across DoD have been directed to personally engage in changing the culture. In 2022, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin stated that commanders will be held accountable for their unit's command climate regarding sexual harassment and assault. This means things like Vanessa Morbeck. Command climate survey results on these issues could impact promotions, prevention efforts, and cultural change. The long-term goal is to prevent MST from happening in the first place. Prevention efforts have shifted toward a public health approach, identifying risk factors like heavy alcohol use environments, power imbalances, or barracks living conditions, and protective factors like good leadership and respectful climate to target interventions. Some initiatives include bystander training that empowers troops to intervene if they see predatory behavior, campaigns to reduce stigmatization of reporting, and integrating discussions of MST into leadership courses so that future officers and NCOs foster better climates. The military has also started to acknowledge the role of sexual harassment as a precursor to sexual assault. With harassment now punishable, commands are supposed to crack down on it early, rather than ignoring smaller infractions that can escalate. Military sexual trauma, the military's silent battlefield, or Columbia Social Work Review. The hope is that by not tolerating jokes, catcalling, or other forms of harassment, potential perpetrators will be deterred and potential victims will feel safer. Another aspect of prevention is taking care of those who have already been harmed, to avoid compounding the trauma. The VA and DoD have bolstered transition assistance for separating service members who experienced MST, so they don't fall through the cracks when leaving the military. Early intervention, even while still in service, via programs like DoD's Safe Helpline and Bridging to VA Care, is a form of prevention too, preventing chronic PTSD or homelessness down the line. Ongoing challenges. Despite these positive developments, challenges remain. Reports of sexual assault in the military reached a record high in recent years. Changing military culture is akin to turning a ship. It takes time for new policies to trickle down to every unit and for attitudes to shift. Many MST survivors and advocates are cautiously optimistic. The reforms on paper are significant, but effective implementation is the key. There is close scrutiny on how the new independent prosecution system will work. 2023 and 2024 are transition years, with full implementation expected by 2025. Advocates are watching to ensure that cases don't fall through jurisdictional cracks and that commanders indeed relinquish control as required. Meanwhile, Congress continues to introduce legislation to fill gaps. For example, bills to improve compensation and benefits for MST survivors, recognizing the unique hardships they face, such as a 2023 proposal to increase VA disability ratings for PTSD due to MST, and to improve MST claim review processes. On the awareness front, the conversation has expanded to include male survivors, more visibly acknowledging that although a smaller percentage of men are assaulted, they may feel an even heavier stigma and underreport. The VA has published educational materials like the Men and MST brochure to encourage male veterans to seek help. Military sexual. There is also growing awareness of MST in minority populations and LGBTQ+ personnel, leading to more inclusive support services. For instance, VA facilities ensuring staff are culturally competent to treat LGBTQ+ survivors without bias. In conclusion, the landscape surrounding military sexual trauma in 2025 is one of significant change and cautious hope. Survivors are finding their voices heard more than before, and institutional policies are finally catching up to what advocates had long been calling for. The military is under greater accountability to prevent and respond to MST, and the VA is continually improving how it cares for those who live with MST's aftermath. While no one can claim the MST crisis is solved, there is much work to be done to actually reduce incidents and to earn survivors' trust. There is momentum in the right direction. With sustained effort in prevention, robust support for survivors, and a culture that does not tolerate sexual